brisket and everybody tells you and you post it and you sell out every time, it's an open door. Maybe I should go pursue it.
Welcome to the Howie and Beastmode podcast, where we discuss all things business, including growth, strategy, and execution, as well as personal and professional development. Let's join Howie and Beastmode in conversation.
Cool. You look a little French.
Wow, I was there too much.
That's cool. Well, awesome. Are you guys ready to get after this?
In the IT business, or the IT side of the business is, I've been pretty much in almost everything, like IT support, that's like help desk. I've been a system administrator for a database, marketing database that operates 24/7. I worked in the IT project management as business analyst and project manager. And lately, because I've had so much experience in the software delivery cycle, I transition into agile software development. So currently my role is a Scrum Master. So it's a role that helps teams become more efficient in what they do in the software industry. And yeah, I pretty much work with people. So even though I'm in the IT business, I work a lot with people.
That's great. Very cool. Well, what are some, in terms of, business lessons, what are some business things, some business principles maybe that you might be able to pass along? Things that work for you or that you see work in business?
So definitely, that it's a very broad question, but if I went to, even though I work in you would think like it's software development. There's a lot of computer there, but you actually have to work with a lot of people. So the relationship are a very important key aspect of and in your career. So the way you interact with internal customers, stakeholders, and how you build a relationship. Because one thing I always say that it's always better to work with friends. So it makes it so much easier. So developing the relationships are key for achieving success.
That's good. Yeah, you wouldn't sort of, from an IT perspective, you wouldn't expect someone to say relationships are, a key foundational item, but now that makes sense for sure.
For sure, yeah. And then, and even one of the agile principle talks about, collaboration over, written documentation. So it adds value more on the way you interact with people in order to achieve something, as opposed to, we have to specify this and this and this, and it's kind of like putting more value on. It doesn't mean that the processes are not valuable. It just means that we tend to value more those interactions better than those processes.
Wow, that's really cool. That helps me actually right now in my job. I'm not even in, the IT field, and that's really helpful actually. I tend to turn everything into a process instinctively, even my household, even my grooming, like whatever. I turn everything into a process. Like I know exactly why I do everything because I've thought about it. And by the way, that's exaggeration. because it's not like I have that level of self-awareness, but I do see, I tend to have a pattern of turning things into a process, and then I do tend to document and memorialize things natively, like journaling, comes out of me automatically, even in my business world or personal world. And so this helps me a lot to know that it doesn't mean that we don't care about process. It doesn't mean that we don't care about documentation, but the collaboration is more important. And that is really great, man, for me right now, like even in my career.
For sure, yeah, and it is very interesting because most people that are in the IT field are engineers, and engineers are very process driven. So it is a mindset shift that that usually Scrum Master uh, provoke. That's why usually Scrum Master are also referred as agents of change, because we help the whole organization change their mindset.
Paul, one thing I'm curious and would love for you to expound on is part of the relationships is how do I communicate effectively with someone who's super technical, with somebody who's a customer focused front end, with somebody who's financially minded and that's all they care about, is being able to have those conversations, pull all the data together, because I can't talk to the CFO the same way I'm talking to an engineer. Otherwise, I'm going to get wrong answers. So can you explain how you go about doing that?
Yeah. So natively, you have several roles in a team that works in software development cycle. So we have several roles, and intuitively, some roles are more prone to be more technical than others, and there's usually one role that's called the product owner, and this person definitely talks business and can make this bridge. But what we incentivize is not only the role to have that to perform that bridge, but also create some opportunities. For instance, one of the opportunities that we create is having one of the sessions that's called sprint review, where you actually, after a time box, which can varies between 2 weeks to 1 month, you showcase what you have produced, okay? And usually this person, so this is an opportunity because developers who are very engineer mindset and have this opportunity on a frequent basis to develop that skill, to communicate in value. So for instance, one thing you show, okay, you can show the features, and the feature might be outputs, but what we try to say, how can we explain is what are they gaining because of this feature? So that definitely changes the dynamics and the stakeholders or the business people can start to respect more to our developers, because they start talking about what is in for them, like what's the value that this new feature that we just a click on a button that does something. So it may be just that's if you explain that, well, when you click here and it does this, that's very output driven. But if you explain it in such a way, where are they gaining? Okay, before you used to do this in 10 minutes, now you can do it in 30 seconds, and so we're saving you in the company this amount of time. So that's more outcome driven than output driven. So this is it, and we create those opportunities for the team to do it.
How about just in general, what is Agile, and why did Agile get created? Like, what was the problem?
Sure. And it's interesting because the idea, okay, so the actual problem that the Agile frameworks try to solve is to be able to course correct in a timely manner. What that's mean is usually, or traditional projects, often called waterfall projects, you have phases, and you take, for instance, 1 month, 2 months to do a requirement phase, and then you have a design phase, takes 1 or 2 months or whatever the case may be, development 4, 6 months, and then you go into a testing phase. So you can see how this is called. That's why it's called waterfall, because it's kind of you go and you go down the road doing this, but all of a sudden when you're testing with the actual user, you find out something that changes everything. And how do you go back in time and fix that? It's not possible. It's too late by the time you're testing. So the agile frameworks, Scrum being one of them, because there's not only Scrum, there are extreme programming, there are Kanban, there are many other frameworks. What they try to solve is to create those feedback loops often enough that you can react to market changes. You can react to strategies changes. You can react to, for instance, there's a new law that came in, and you can react to, oh, well, we had this hypothesis, but we proved that it's not worth pursuing. Therefore, you save the company a lot of money. So that's a negative scenario turning to positive for the company because it took them probably those two iterations of 2 weeks to find out that. Okay, you wanna test hypothesis.
I really wish I would have learned this. I wish I would have learned this in 2007 so bad. I'm serious. Yeah. I spent 3 years on something, and I should have spent 3 months.
It's good that you put this failing fast, and the thing is, in software development, as in many things, because just want to be clear, agile frameworks are not for everything. Okay, so usually when do you need to have some agile frameworks? It usually is the more complexity that you have, or the more uncertainty you have, the better these frameworks can help you. Because when you have something that is very predictable, like for instance, building a house, you can do it. You don't need agile to do building a house. Because you can do waterfall. You can have a plan. You can have a design. And you can have a building phase. And so for things that are very predictable and there are no uncertainty, waterfall strives. But for things that you have a lot of uncertainty, you don't know what you don't know. You want to test a hypothesis. That's where this framework help you. So because you are allowed to fail, but you fail fast. Okay. You learn from that, and then you move on.
So building a house is a good example. So that's kind of a repetitive thing. Someone buys a house, they know what they're getting, they know what they agreed to. So the blueprint is there and everything's, so that makes sense to be more of a waterfall approach. But for novel things or new things, or for innovations,
exactly.
Yeah, I can see why.
For startup,
startup, well. Yeah. that could be an
it's
internal
very
startup.
common. Mm-hmm.
Could be an internal startup, could be a software project. I know they're using Agile in other ways now outside of IT too. I don't know. I can't give you an example, but I've heard of that it is happening.
Yeah, in fact, in our company, we're starting to using Agile in the other areas that are not necessarily software developments. Like for instance, one area of the strategic marketing is called engagement marketing, where there's pretty much almost no software development, but they're applying the principles and concepts there.
That's great.
Definitely. It's very applicable because whenever you have something that there's a lot of uncertainty, this framework can help you to expose those issues that you can find in you need to find a solution, or you need to change course fast. And this is what it helped with. It's very helpful.
Gotcha.
Paul, how many feedback loops is too many is really my question. Like, you want to have more than one kind of going at a time, but how many is too many, would you say?
Well, it depends on the on what you're working on. For instance, usually when there's one concept that you have a values, it's called value stream mapping, where you map out your process and you find where's what all your process, what the change of steps to produce an increment, that you produce a product, whatever. And sometimes it's that value stream, it's large. I mean, it's not something that you can do in 2 or 3 days. It's something that you need probably 3 weeks or even 4 weeks. So in that case, like, it doesn't make sense to do feedback loops of 4 days or 5 days, or because you need to allow the team to produce something that you cannot, but at the same time, and that happens a lot with software development. Usually the typical feedback loop is 2 weeks. It's very common. But what we say is the feedback loops, there are mini or internal feedback loops that you can still apply. You don't have to wait for the 2 weeks, but you can say, hey, I'm working on this. How do you see it? Do you like it? Do you see any problem? Will it work for you? And that is a feedback loop that doesn't necessarily have to wait the 2 weeks. But to answer your question, I would say when you are doing too many feedback loops is when you have a value stream that is too long to produce, that you don't have anything to show. I know it's not a straight answer, but
yeah, and for sure. I mean, everybody's going to be different. Really, my hope with even asking the question is to give individuals the comfortability to have multiple feedback loops. And so again, I know that you can probably give us a better example, but you could have a 2-week feedback loop, but then you have daily meetings to say, are we on track? What do you need to accomplish that? That's set out in 2 weeks. So that daily is still a feedback loop inside of that 2-week loop,
Exactly. And you just got it. I mean, that's why I mentioned the internal feedback loops that you can still have. Everything, one of the frameworks is the most popular, is called Scrum. And everything that this framework has is about doing 2 words: inspect and adapt. So you inspect on one of the it's called Scrum event is daily Scrum. The daily Scrum is a 15-minute call where you have all your teams gathering, and what you do in this in this is try to inspect and adapt. So whatever is going to happen in the next 24 hours, you try to inspect and adapt. Is it that really, are you actually tackling the things that are more important? And sometimes it's not only the most important, but what is the thing that is aging up, for instance, the most, that you can probably tackle first, because that is an indicative there is an impediment. Absolutely. I mean, that's the internally you can have as many different loops.
What about, how do you handle a situation where somebody, let's just say on a technical team, reports into their daily meeting or weekly, so it hasn't gone the full 2 weeks or 4 weeks, and produces a problem and says, hey, Paul, this is an issue, okay? And this issue is going to affect that team over there. What is step number one for you, and how you take that feedback to then get it? Now we got to adjust the team. We got to adjust, because if this is affecting you, what's kind of running through your mind and how you're handling that?
So it looks like what you're mentioning is something about dependencies. This I have to do something, or somebody has to do something for me, otherwise I will get stuck, right? This is
yeah, or just or just what I'm working on is going to affect that person and what they're working on. We're working on them separately, but I've found an issue in what I'm working on. And so if I keep working on it, it's going to affect what they're doing. So we need to fix it now.
Yeah, for sure. This is something that we battle all the time. It's called silos. Like people working in silos. That's exactly what you're saying. So what I'm working might affect it. So what you try, the way to minimize that mentality of working in silos is to create touch points between those the two things. Okay, so they can interact, and it doesn't need to be on a daily basis, but a regular cadence that works for them. And when you create those touch points, then you know that what they're working is it might be deadline related, so they need to coordinate a little bit more the timing or the handoff or whatever the case may be. So definitely it's by creating touch points between two or different teams.
That's another great one. That helps me too. I feel like you're just helping me today. It's great. Yeah, it's surprising because what I find is that there's kind of a serendipity that happens when I have a touch point with someone, like I had one today, and I intended to speak with this individual for 15 minutes about one topic. We ended up talking about a couple of other topics, and then at the end we covered the one topic. But I wouldn't have even had, if I didn't have the touch point, then I wouldn't have had some additional collaboration that was beneficial. So almost recognizing a principle here of creating touch points to avoid, creation of silos is almost like the principle leads to some really interesting serendipitous outcomes.
Correct. Yeah. And when the teams are growing, when you have a big product, you have several teams working on the same product, then you can start working on some techniques about portfolio management, having setting up some cadence where all of the teams meet at the same time and they collaborate. It doesn't need, by the way, when we say all the teams meet, they don't need to be every single team member, but you can appoint some key members that represent different teams, and they can collaborate and figure out what's the overall priority of the business, so that you can tackle those. But of course, this is when you have several teams working on a big product.
Well, I got a question on leadership. And so my question is, as a leader, as a scrum master, you're the leader over a certain amount of team members. If you were to, and I'm not saying that you would ever be, but if you were negligible in doing your duties, do you think your team would naturally just do its cadence, as you said, stay in rhythm? Or do you think that as leaders, if we're in a place of leadership, it's part of our duties to ensure we find a cadence and a rhythm and manage that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting question, because at the end, I mean, what every Scrum Master's desire is to help the team so much, or they mature so much that they are no longer needed. that's the key. Obviously, that in practice is not that happens, but more like when you help a team to grow so much, so then you can probably help other teams and not dedicate so much time to these teams. But with your question, when the Scrum Master doesn't go to their duties, I mean, this is I don't know. I mean, it's they can probably stall, but it also depends on the team. So I'm not sure if that answers the question.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm just trying to put it into real world, related to everyone out here. We've all had days being a leader in some capacity where you say, I'm not really feeling it today. And I've done I've trained this team, and I know they can do it. And so if I don't lead the Scrum meeting today, or you know what, I'm just gonna I'm gonna cancel today's touch point because it's probably the same as last time. You know, and when we get out of rhythm, you know, then, and especially as leaders leading that, then my theory and my take on it is that our team members would retroact back to their individual silos again, you know, and then to go over to, like, say somebody like Dennis, they're going to sit here and their information, they're going to run into a dead end and just say, it is what it is. Next task for me. And there's no cross, you know, they're never going to think about, well, my dead end affects this dead end over here. You know, it's going to create a dead end for my teammate. That makes sense?
Yeah, for sure. So the idea is that there's a concept that is servant leader, and this role doesn't have any authority over anybody, and that's very important, because that, you know, you get to exercise leadership skills, because naturally you don't have any authority, so there's you have to earn that leadership. So the best outcome, or the best thing that you realize that you are doing your job as a leader, is when you are absent, things are happening the way they're supposed to. Okay, so or even better, like if you take a vacation, say for instance 3 weeks, and then you see improvements from the time that you left, then you know that you've done your job.
Most guys would be intimidated by that and be afraid of that, and say, you know what, I need my team dependent upon me. I need them. If I leave, then all heck's gonna break loose. I mean, most people think that way. And again, this is, and it's unfortunate, because then it creates a mentality where you can't take a break. And when you're on a vacation, now you're on you got your phone on you 24/7, you know, and there's no empowerment, there's no growth, you know. But I think we've all been there.
There is a natural fear in business and a natural defensiveness sometimes. of, you know, you don't want to get yourself replaced, or you don't want to become less valuable. And sometimes people want to keep control over things. I heard about this situation today, not with somebody that works in my company, but I was talking to somebody who works at a pretty large partner organization. And apparently what had happened was, and it was IT related, by the way, but apparently this group didn't want to leverage a certain type of tool set, apparently, and they were blocking and they were passively aggressively avoiding using a certain tool set, which would dramatically speed up the work. And the reason why is they wanted to be seen as valuable for doing the work manually, even though it's much longer, and it actually creates more billing hours to bill the customer as well, apparently, the way they're set up. So it's kind of, you know, it's a little bit of a different scenario, but it kind of illustrates the point that people do carry around some fear in business of not being valuable. But I think in Beastmode's particular example, if that manager were to train and equip and release authority and release you know, authority and ability and training and accountability, also accountability too, then what they might find is that their day-to-day workers could take over some of those responsibilities, and then the manager could work on new things. So you don't always risk your job by delegating and empowering people to go do what you can do. You don't always risk your job. In fact, I would say that that would be the exception rather than the rule. And what I like to tell people in my particular industry, which is very IT specific and very tool specific, is that we're going to take care of the mundane for you. We're going to automate some of the mundane things and get those things off of your plate, because you're a really valuable resource and you can be working on more strategy and more bigger picture things. So whether it's delegating to a tool or a new process, or whether it's delegating to, like to Beastmode's point, to your team, you know, we have to have an understanding in business that we're more valuable than mundane tasks that can be either automated or taught to someone else, and we can bring a lot more to the table. So I think fear gets in the way of them, and of people who think like Beastmode was describing. Fear gets in their way from becoming more strategic, and it's interesting that by becoming selfish, right, they think they're defending their area of expertise or power or something, but they're actually failing by keeping that close. Instead of releasing that, they're actually keeping themselves too busy to be strategic and show more value, which might have got them promoted. So it's this weird unintended consequence of not being willing to release.
For sure, yeah, and this that is often seen in some roles that are subject matter experts, that I mean, they have a lot of knowledge. This is something this is another change we try to cause, because I mean, Scrum Master are also, they call it, we don't always, I mean, we can remove impediments, but to cause an impediment removal is more valuable than to actually remove the impediment. It's kind of the famous saying to teach somebody to fish instead of giving the fish, you know. So, but it's something that we try to teach or to coach, I would say. Subject matter expert is, if you share your knowledge, guess what can happen? Then other people can take your place, and then you can move on to higher places. So that's the way, I mean, the mindset that we have to think about.
I'm typing this in because it's really helping me. So, you know, listen, I want to get an update on you as well. So it's really great you've taught us. Really great. I mean, I took notes like crazy. and you're helping my job. So thank you. And you'll help others for sure. But I want to hear also about your, your own, a little bit of a personal update, on any other thing that you're working on, any side things, or, any, or it could be within your job, something cool that is inspiring that you're learning from. So what's happening with you, with your personal work or with entrepreneurship or anything? What's going on?
Well, I mentioned that I was on a business trip. So I was fortunate enough that other than, we had a summit, where we met with our colleagues from other parts of the world. But at the same time, it was they called every year or so they do something that is called the future builders. So they nominate people to become future builders, of the company. And I was fortunate enough to be nominated, and again, that's how I went to Jordan on that trip, because it was paid by the company to those future builders. So that was kind of cool, and
that's so cool. Congrats.
Yeah, it was very rewarding, and I didn't even know that I was nominated, and it was kind of a cool surprise to have that, and the fact that the people who won that title of future builders, were awarded with this trip to Jordan. Which this is, by the way, there was one point of the on the trip that you were by this Dead Sea, and you could see Jerusalem on the other side of the Dead Sea.
Very cool. So we need to rewind this and say, joining us is future builder Paul Oliver. It's wonderful. Well, that's cool, man. How's your team? How's everything going there? Any updates with just how you're handling that?
Yeah. So on the company level, so what we're trying to do is we work with some software development teams, but what we're trying to do is to move agility to the whole company. So that's a big undertaking. So right now we're just working with the marketing department. So that's why I mentioned some other areas that we are helping. But the idea is because Hilti is a very what's the word, conservative company. So it has over 100 years, and they're built with engineers, and the engineers logically they love processes, and bringing agility is not something that is very. It's hard. It's a mindset shift that needs to happen. So it starts with obviously the leadership. But it's not something that you can just flip your finger and we're just implementing Scrum here, and then now we can agile. No, it's a transformation. We call it transformation. So that's the some of the exciting things that we're working on, because we want to bring agility to the rest of the organization.
Why do you call it a transformation? Can you expand on that?
Sure. It's because you're actually transforming the ways of working. So and starting with the mindset, like concepts of it's okay to fail. You don't have to win all the time, because by failing and learning from that, you can move on, decreasing those feedback loops, because things sometimes you may be too late into the marketplace if you wait too long or years to do something. So those are things that are part of.
Wondered how to utilize your personal business or customer problems? Howie's got some thoughts on this.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm going to preach you some business Jesus right now on this, guys. So this is such a critical topic that Beastmode and I really like to focus on from time to time. And that is that your biggest issue, if you can put a spotlight on that and turn that into a benefit, that's a tremendous advantage instead of you walking by that, because so many business owners, sales executives, sales and marketing professionals, and others have a business problem and they let themselves go through that wasted time or that pain or that risk or that failure because they're used to it or they don't really know how to wrestle with that. So turn your business problem, turn the business failure, turn that chronic thing that's pesky into an opportunity by going ahead and giving yourself permission to look at it and to focus on it and even name it. If you can say it, if you can name it, then you can go work on it and fix it.